Okay, chapter 10, last chapter, conic sections. Okay, conic sections are circles, hyperbolas, parabolas, and ellipses. Okay, that'll make more sense later on, but that's kind of where we're going with this. Okay, so we start with the distance formula and the midpoint formula. Hopefully, you guys should remember these. Okay, you've been using them or you've used them before, so you should remember this being a little bit of review, the first section. Okay, so to get the distance formula, you use the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so you have 2 points. Okay, want to find the distance between them here. Point B has coordinates x2, y2, and point A has coordinates x1, y1. Okay, but we can form a right triangle with a horizontal and a vertical. Okay, so the Pythagorean theorem says the length of AB ends up being the hypotenuse, so AB squared is, and then we put point C here. Okay, it has coordinates x2 because it's under point B, and y1 because it's next to A. So we get the length of AC squared plus the length of BC squared is the hypotenuse squared. Okay, so the length of AB is D. The length of AC is the difference in the x coordinates because it's a horizontal line. So we get x2 minus x1 squared plus the length of BC, it's vertical, so it's just going to be the difference in their y coordinates because they're on top of each other. Okay, and then get D by itself, you take the square root. So we get that the distance between 2 points is the difference in their x values squared plus the difference in their y values squared, and then take the square root. And this is called the distance formula. It works for any 2 points in the coordinate plane. Okay, so if I'm looking to find the distance between the points 2, -4, and -5, -1. Okay, then the distance is equal to the square root of the difference in their x values, so -5 minus 2 squared, plus the difference in their y values, -1 minus -4 squared. We're subtracting, and then it's a negative. So -5 minus -2, or minus 2 is -7. -1 minus -4, that's -1 plus 4, so that would be 3 squared. So we get the square root of -7 squared is 49, 3 squared is 9, so square root of 49 plus 9 is the square root of 58. We can just simplify. If you want to get a decimal, it's an approximate, so 7.62. Generally, I would just prefer a radical. Okay, we've talked about this before because it's an exact answer. It's also easy to square root because you just get rid of the radical sign. Okay, so difference in your x squared plus difference in your y squared, and then take the square root, and that will be the distance between any 2 given points. You can use this to classify a triangle, find out if you have a square or a rectangle, all of that. So to do that, you're just finding the length of every side. Okay? All right, distance formula. Another formula that is useful is the midpoint formula. Okay? And the midpoint of a segment is just the point that is equidistant from 2 other points. So it's the middle, okay? And you can only have a midpoint of a segment because a line keeps going. So you can't find the middle of something that keeps going, okay? So the midpoint formula just says if you have a line segment joining 2 points, A and B, okay, x coordinate, y coordinate, x coordinate, y coordinate, then the midpoint, if the midpoint is the middle, it's like an average, right? So you find the average of the 2 points. And an average is you add up the values, divide by how many there are. So the midpoint of a segment is the average of their x-coordinate and the average of the y. So x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Okay, and it is a point, so it needs an x and a y coordinate. It's not just a single value. Okay, it is a midpoint, so make sure you have your x and y. All right, so if point A is at 6, -2, and point B is at 2, -9, we want to find the midpoint. Okay, well, the midpoint is the average of the x and the average of the y. So add up your x coordinates, divide by 2. Add up your y coordinates, divide by 2. So 6 plus 2 over 2. So 6 plus 2 over 2 is 8 over 2. -2 plus -9 is -11 over 2. Simplify if possible. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then -11 over 2 is just -11 over 2. Don't make it a decimal. You can leave it as a fraction simplified. So halfway between this point and this point is 4, -11 over 2. Okay? This is useful when you want to write the equation of a perpendicular bisector. Okay? Because perpendicular bisector means it passes through the midpoint, so that would be the point on the line. Perpendicular is opposite reciprocal slopes. So you can use the slope and the midpoint to get the equation of a line. Okay? So again, hopefully you know these two formulas. Now it's just a matter of remembering them. Okay? So I want to write the equation of a perpendicular bisector. Of the line segment that joins C and D. C is at -2, 1, and D is at 1, 4. Okay? So, perpendicular bisector. Okay? First thing is bisector means middle. Okay? So it splits it in two. So you find the midpoint. Okay, so you add their x coordinates, divide by 2, add their y coordinates, divide by 2. So the midpoint is at -1/2, 5/2. Okay, then you need the slope of your line. So perpendicular means opposite reciprocal slopes. So you have to find the slope of your given line. So the slope of CD. Okay, slope is rise over run. So change in y's over change in x's. So 4 minus 1 over 1 minus -2. 4 minus 1 is 3. 1 minus -2 is also 3. So the slope of CD is 1. But perpendicular, okay, so the line that we're writing the equation for has to be the opposite reciprocal. So the opposite of 1 is negative, and the reciprocal of 1 is 1. So the slope of our perpendicular bisector is -1. So now we're going to use our midpoint and our slope to write our equation. Okay, so you have a point and a slope, so use point-slope form. So y minus y1 equals slope times x minus x1. Okay, this is your point and your slope. So it's y minus 5 over 2 equals -1 times x minus -1/2. And then solve for y. So we get y minus 5 over 2 equals -x minus 1/2. Because it's minus a negative, so positive, and then distribute your negative. And then get y by itself, so you add 5 over 2. So -x, -1/2 plus 5 over 2 is just 2. So the equation of our perpendicular bisector is y equals negative x plus 2. Okay? All right. One more problem. Okay, so if you're given the distance between 2 points, you can use the distance formula to find the coordinates of the other points. Okay, so the distance between 2 points is the square root of 74, and you know one of your points is at 1, 3, and a second point is at negative x, 6, or negative 6x. Okay. The distance formula tells us that the distance between 2 points is equal to the square root of the difference in their x values squared plus the difference in their y values squared. Okay, so we're just going to plug in what we know. We know the distance is the square root of 74. So we get the square root of 74 equals the square root of difference in their x values. So their x values would be negative 6 minus 1 squared plus the difference in their y values squared. Well, their y values would be x minus 3. Okay, then we have to get x by itself. So just start simplifying. So square root of 74, we can't simplify. Negative 6 minus 1 is negative 7. You can't simplify x minus 3. So we get square root of 74 equals the square root of 49 plus x minus 3 squared. Okay, you want to get x by itself. So the first thing I would do is I'd get rid of the radical, okay? Because you can't take the square root of this side. So to undo a radical, we're going to square both sides. So we get 74 equals 49 plus x minus 3 squared. Okay, then start isolating x. So I would subtract 49 from both sides. Okay, and you get 25 equals x minus 3 squared. To undo squaring something, take the square root. Okay, so square root of 25 is plus or minus 5. Do not forget that plus or minus 5. And the square root of x minus 3 squared is x minus 3. Okay, then you have two possibilities here. You have to remember to split it, because it could be 5 equals x minus 3, or it could be negative 5 equals x minus 3. Okay, then solve for x. You add 3 to both sides, so we get x equals 8. Or add 3 here, we get x equals negative 2. X is not a measurement, so x could be either one. So positive 8 or negative 2. Okay, so that is your distance and midpoint formula. Should be a little bit of review for you.